Welcome to the HeatScribe tutorial. This video will walk you through using the software from first launch to setup and customization, importing images, taking measurements, and finally exporting your PDF reports. If you're watching on YouTube, note that there are chapter markers below so you can quickly jump between sections as needed. So quickly, what is HeatScribe and what problems does it solve? So HeatScribe was built in response to my own frustration of being unable to work with images from my DJI M30T on my main computer, which is a MacBook Pro. I do power line inspections for a local utility, and it was irritating needing to dust off my old slow Windows machine every time I needed to do thermal analysis work. Well, the rest of my business runs entirely and very well on my Mac. So there are a few online options to help solve this problem, but they're expensive and they're all subscription based. But more importantly, my main client has strict rules about keeping their data offline. So I'm not allowed to upload any images, thermal or otherwise, of their assets to the cloud for processing or for reporting purposes. So I needed to create a macOS native thermal analysis and reporting tool that would enable Mac users not only to work with their DJI images, but to do so quickly and efficiently, particularly with repetitive or organizational tasks, while most importantly ensuring their client data is kept safe. So with that in mind, HeatScribe makes extensive use of user customizable templates, which we'll go into shortly. If you like what you see in this tutorial, please give HeatScribe a try. You can download a free 14-day trial of the pro version of the app from heatscribe.com and see if it fits your business. So with that, let's launch the app and start the tutorial. The first time you launch HeatScribe, you'll be asked to read and agree to the end user license agreement. After that, you'll see this screen, which notifies you that HeatScribe is preparing the thermal engine. The thermal engine is the software that enables HeatScribe to use DJI's own thermal processing software on a Mac. This can take a minute or two to set up, so please don't interrupt it. Once this initial setup is complete, subsequent launches of the app will be much faster. So once the thermal engine is up and running, you'll be asked to enter your unit and date format preferences, which you can always change at a later date if you like. And then you'll see this welcome screen. This screen provides quick links to the Quick Start Guide and the tutorial that you're watching right now. When you're ready to start using the app, click Get Started. Okay, so with the app ready to go, you can launch right into image analysis by importing some of your thermal images with the Import Image Folder button here, or you can import a single image here under the File menu. But what I recommend, assuming you're a business that will be doing repeated thermal reports over time, is customizing the app a little bit more to save you some time later. So I'm going to show you how to do that now. So HeatScribe gives you the option of saving lists of clients, equipment or drones that you use, and inspectors. That way, when you create an inspection, you're given the option of simply selecting the client from a list. Same with the inspector, same with the drone. So you don't have to enter all that information every time. So let's see how to set that up now. So up at the top, we'll go to Edit and then Settings. The first thing you'll see is down the tab at the side here. You'll see we're in the General section. This is your application preferences. We already set most of these upon first launch. We have our units to imperial, we have our date format, and you can also set your default thermal palette here if you want. But what we're really here to look at are these profiles below. So let's start with inspector profiles. For many of us, that's just one person, but there could be larger companies that have a variety of inspectors. So on the left here, you can see that there is a list of inspectors that are already created. I've made one example one here. You can see that if I click them, all the information is filled out here, including a logo for their company. If you wanted to make a new one, or update, well, if you wanted to update this one, you simply make your updates and hit Save. If you want to make a new one, you can hit New and enter all that information, right? Inspector 2, yada, 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 save, and now Inspector 2 is added to this list. Same thing goes with client profiles. I have one example client here. I have their logo in, I have their address, I have their main contact info, and I could always create a new one if I wanted. Also for equipment, let's say I'm using a DJI M30T, which I am. I have my serial number in here. I can hit save, and now that's added to the list, and you see the serial number next to it. So even if you're a solo entrepreneur or a solo inspector, it's still worth taking the time to fill out these profiles simply so you don't have to enter your information every single time. And of course, hopefully you'll be dealing with multiple clients. So quickly selecting them from a list when you do an inspection for them can be a big time saver. Okay, so now that we have our profiles filled out, let's move on to creating our first inspection. We'll look at that now. So from the main screen, we can create a new inspection by clicking the Create New Inspection button, or we can select New Inspection from the File menu. We'll click the button here. A dialog window shows up which walks us through the 5 steps needed to create an inspection. You can see the steps along the top of the window. The first section is the overview. Here we'll enter the basic information required to name and identify our inspection. We can also enter the sky condition during the inspection and select an inspection type. Note that if you have the Pro version of HeatScribe, you can create your own list of inspection types. We'll name our inspection Sample Inspection, make up a job number, make up a location. We'll just say New York City, and we'll say we had overcast skies. So here's our inspection type. We'll keep it on general for now. But note that as we change our inspection type, our inspection findings template changes as well to correspond to our inspection type. So in HeatScribe, we use the term finding to denote any type of thermal anomaly or really anything of interest that you see during your inspection and would like to bring to the attention of your clients. So we'll explore findings in detail later, but for now, we'll leave the inspection type on general and we'll hit next. Now we're on to the thermal defaults. So here we can set the values for the variables that affect our temperature measurements. Both the thermal and weather defaults set here can be overwritten at the image level at any time. You can always edit these values later. So what you set here is not set in stone at all. So we have emissivity, we have distance in the thermal defaults, and down here we have our weather defaults. So in the weather defaults section, you'll see a checkbox for fetching weather data online. This feature uses the metadata in your thermal images to fetch the exact weather at the time and place your image was taken. You need an internet connection for this to work. But again, you can turn this on or off at any time, and you can also apply it to any specific image. What you set here does not need to be a global setting that again is set in stone. You can always change this later. The next 3 tabs are our client, inspector, and equipment tabs. If you set up these profiles ahead of time, you can simply select the appropriate client, inspector, or drone from your list. If not, you can add them now. So here's my drop down here. I had my made up superpower utility. I select that. My client information is entered automatically, and I'm ready to move on. Same thing happened here with my one example inspector. All the information is entered automatically. And of course, all this information is surfaced in your final report. And then on to equipment, same idea. I'll select my M30T, hit save, and we're ready to go. So once you finish creating your inspection, you can see your inspection information in the top left corner of the app. At any point, you can save your inspection and load it to continue working at a later date by choosing the Load Inspection button on the home screen, or under File, you can open a previous inspection or a recent inspection here. Okay, let's move on to importing our images. With our inspection created, let's import our images and get to work. You can import a folder of images using the Import Image Folder button here, or you can import a single image from the File menu. Most inspections, I assume, will want to be opening a whole folder of images, so we'll do that now. Once the images have been imported, you'll see that the central grid area of the application has been populated with thumbnails, and the left panel lists our image file names in the Findings and Images section. These two sections will update and organize themselves as we create findings and add images to them. And clearly you can see here that HeatScribe will support both thermal and visible light images. If you wish to organize your images, you can always click and drag them in the left panel. So if I wanted to take this visible light image here and move it to the top, I can click and drag it up there, and you can see that its position is updated on the grid. To switch from a grid view to a full screen image view, you can use the Image View button at the top of the screen, or you can double-click an image. When you view a thermal image, you'll see a toolbar at the top of the screen appear. This toolbar allows you to access a variety of temperature measurements, as well as ways to zoom, pan, and crop the image itself. You can zoom the image by clicking the plus and minus buttons here, or simply by scrolling your mouse wheel. The pan tool, which is active by default, allows you to reposition the image once you've zoomed in. The fit button fits the entire image to your screen, and the 100% button sizes the image so that each pixel corresponds to a pixel on your monitor. Thermal images are quite low resolution, so the image appears small in that case. But for a visible light image, it's quite a different story, and you get a big sort of zoom into the image. If you want to move on to a new image, you can simply select it on the left panel, or you can use the arrow keys up and down to navigate through the list, or you can simply go back to the grid view and select a different image. Let's take a look at a visible light image. You can see that with a visible light image active, our toolbar has changed. We no longer have access to our temperature measurements. Instead, we have a variety of annotation tools to help point out features of the image to our clients, like so. If you're not happy with the framing of the image, you can use the crop tool to denote the part of the image you'd like included in your final report. I can hit the crop button and then drag over the image. You can clear the crop at any time using the Clear Crop button. And you can also erase your annotations at any time with the Clear All button. This covers the basics of importing and viewing images. Next, we'll move on to thermal measurements. With the thermal image active, HeatScribe's interface has switched back to thermal mode, which gives you access to a variety of measurement tools. Before demonstrating them, let me quickly cover everything that you're seeing on your screen. Along the top of the screen, we have our toolbar with our measurement and image navigation tools, which we covered in the last section of the tutorial. We also have our thermal palette selector here. Personally, I prefer iron red, but you can select whichever one you like. All the standard DJI ones have been included. Next to the image, we have our temperature range. By default, the range will perfectly cover the hottest and coolest pixel in the image. This is to avoid the risk of hot areas clipping and being harder to identify. At any time, you can adjust the max and minimum temperatures in the range at the bottom of the screen, right here. So I have my max at 132. I could change this to 90, let's say, hit apply, and you can see the thermal image updates accordingly, as does the range. At any time then, you can click the auto range box down here to go back to the default. The right pane contains a variety of thermal analysis and workflow tools. Starting at the top, we have our delta T section. HeatScribe lets you designate a hotspot and a reference spot for delta T analysis. So if I hit the Find Hotspot button here, HeatScribe automatically locates the hottest spot in the image. I can then zoom in, pan over, and use my reference tool to find a similar component. And I can see that I have a delta T up here now of 53.6 degrees. And when set up, a priority rating will automatically be shown up here next to the temperature. Let's move down to the next section, which is weather conditions. Depending on what you chose during your inspection setup, you will either see your weather defaults here or the values fetched online from your image metadata time and location. You can use the Fetch Weather button or use the Defaults button to toggle between the two. Let's take a look at this now. I can hit Fetch Weather, And I get a little warning. The warning basically says that the app's going to try to fetch the weather. It needs an internet connection to do so. And if the weather fetch is successful, HeatScribe will use the fetched ambient temperature as the reflected temperature for thermal analysis. If the fetch was successful, you'll get a green confirmation up here, and you'll see your weather settings update accordingly. If you change your mind, you can always hit the Use Defaults button to return to the defaults you entered during your inspection creation process. Below that, we have the ability to override all the variables that go into our thermal measurement calculations. Now, these overrides will only affect the currently active image. These do not change the defaults for your inspection. You can click to expand the section and update the values as you see fit. You'll have to hit the Apply Overrides button for your changes to take effect. So for example, if I change my evasivity, hit Apply Overrides, and you can see my image and measurements update accordingly. I also get a Override Applied confirmation message here. If I want to go back to the defaults, I simply hit the Use Defaults button. Now the next two sections are for creating and editing findings and then generating your report. We'll go over those later. For now, I'll quickly show you the other measurement tools available in HeatScribe. Back on the toolbar at the top, we have our standard spot, rectangle, circle, and line measurements. These operate exactly how you would expect. Now, note that at any time I can have an active measurement, and that measurement will have a yellow border around it. So right now you can see that the circle has a yellow border. That means I can hit the delete key and just delete that measurement. I can click on my spot measurement here and it gets the yellow border. That means I can move it around. I can hit the delete key to delete it. I can also right click on it and hit delete measurement. And also at any point you can use the clear all button at the top right of the screen here to delete all your measurements. All measurements that are active on your thermal image will also show up in your PDF report if that image is included in your report. Next, we'll cover how to create findings, which will let you organize your inspection results before communicating them to your clients in your report. In HeatScribe, we use the term finding for anything that you want to bring to your client's attention. Typically, this would be a thermal anomaly, but it could also be something you happen to see in a visible light image. Images and findings are identified and grouped together in HeatScribe. Findings get their own pages in your thermal reports. Here's an example of a finding page from an inspection report. So let's go about creating this finding. So here we have a transformer, and it looks like this connection may be abnormally hot. We can use the Find Hotspot tool to locate the hottest point in the image, and then the Reference tool to note the temperature on a similar connection. This completes our delta T analysis. On the right panel, in the Findings section, we hit New Finding. By default, the image that is currently active will be added to this new finding. When we hit New Finding, we bring up the Create Finding Dialogs box. What you see in this box is dependent on what your active finding template is. What we see here is from the general template because that's what we set when we created our inspection. If we were using the roof inspection template, there would be different fields here. HeatScribe Pro users can create their own templates and completely customize them to exactly match the information that they want to share with their clients. So for our example, we'll give our finding a name. We'll just call it Elevated Connector Temp. And then in the Observation and Assessment field, we'll put in some basic information about what we see. Basically saying that the one connection point is much higher, has a much higher temperature than a similar component under the same load. Below the Observation and Assessment section, we have our Priority and Follow-up section. This is where we can set what we are recommending our client do next. In my case, I'll say a further evaluation by a qualified expert is recommended. Again, HeatScribe Pro users can edit the options here to put whatever next steps they like in there. Next, we'll set our priority. How you decide to manage your priorities is, of course, entirely up to you. In a later section, I'll show you how you can use a reference standard to automatically apply priorities to your findings. But for this sample, I'll just choose a high priority. Finally, at the bottom of the window, there's an internal notes section. This is just for you to leave notes to yourself. These notes are never surfaced in any report. So with that done, I hit create, and now my findings created. You can also see that my delta T analysis up here has been updated to priority high, and the color has changed to red because that's the color that's associated with high priority. This will be carried through to the final report. If we go back to the grid view, you can see that our finding has been created and our thermal image added to it. Findings are given their own sections in the grid and in the list on the left panel. The green dot next to the file name and the green text below the image indicate that this image is selected to be in your PDF report. Images added to findings are selected for the report by default. You can remove an image from the report by right-clicking it and selecting Toggle Report Inclusion, or selecting and deselecting the Include Current Image in Report checkbox in the Report section of the right panel. Let's add a visible light image to our finding as well to better communicate the location of the anomaly with our client. You can add images to findings by selecting them and then assigning them to a finding in the Findings section of the right panel. You can also add or remove an image from a finding by right-clicking it and selecting Add to Finding. You can also remove images from a finding in the same method. I can right-click and hit Remove from Finding. Let's use this image of a transformer to complement our thermal image. Here I can annotate the image, the big arrow, to show the connector that I'm referring to, and then I can crop it because my client doesn't really need to see what's going on in the background with this tree. We now have a completed finding. We've included the thermal and a visible light image. We've taken our measurements, and we've annotated the visible light image. Because this image is also in our finding, at any point we can hit the Edit Finding button and update our finding details. To see how the finding page will look in our final report, we can export it by selecting any image in the finding and choosing Export Finding Sheet from the Image menu. You can also export just the thermal image itself by choosing Export Image under the Image menu. That looks like this. This is the image itself, and your measurements show up. And the finding sheet looks like this. Now, findings with two images are rendered horizontally in the PDF report, or on the finding sheet, if you're just exporting that. Findings with a single image are rendered vertically, which results in a larger image. You can see that here. And findings with more than two images, like this one, render the first two images on the first page, and then all subsequent images are rendered on the following pages. Now, it's important that if you have a finding with more than two images, that you order them correctly in the app before generating your report, because the order that they are in the app is the order they're going to show up in the report and on your finding sheet. So you want your primary images first and second to make sure they show up on this first page, because this is where all your information that you enter about the finding is. So next, we'll look deeper into finding templates and how to customize them for your business. Every inspection type in HeatScribe has an accompanying findings template. So for example, by default, a roof inspection will use the roof inspection template. In the standard version of HeatScribe, these templates are not editable. However, the Pro version allows for deep customization. Let's look into that now. Under the Edit menu, select Finding Templates. This brings up our Finding Template Editor. Along the left panel, you'll see a list of templates currently in HeatScribe. As you create new ones or edit copies of the default templates, they'll be added to this list. Let's use the general template to go over the options presented in the main editing window. At the top you have the template name and the inspection type that it's associated with. Below that, you have the built-in fields for the template. You can see that in the general template, we only have asset or equipment ID, asset location, and priority as options. The items with checked boxes are the ones currently set to show up in our template. If I switch to the electrical template, you'll see that there are a bunch of new electrical specific fields that are suddenly available. Let's go back to the General tab. At the bottom of the built-in fields section, you'll see an advanced drop-down. Clicking here will reveal all of the built-in fields that HeatScribe offers across all of the different templates. So there are a lot of them. You can add any of them to your own custom templates. And you can see these are split up based on inspection type. So here's all the ones that are built in for the electrical template. Here's all the ones that are built into the roof moisture template, the solar template, and so on. The next section is called Delta T Priority Rules. This section will be covered in detail next in the tutorial, but quickly, here is where you decide whether you want to manually set the priority for each of your findings or have these priorities set automatically based on temperature ranges that you can set up. So by default, it's at Leave Priority Manual. So this is where you set it in your templates, or you can switch it to Set Priority from Delta T. And here you can see the temperature ranges that you would use for your different priority levels. And you could add more if you wish, or remove them. So here's where you could mimic a temperature standard that you wished, maybe one that already exists, maybe one that's specific to your client. This will save you time because then as you take your Delta T measurements, the priorities are assigned automatically. For now, we'll just leave it on the manual version. Finally, if you want to add a field to your custom template that does not already exist in HeatScribe, which is quite possible, you can create them here. Let me show you an example. Clicking Add Field brings up this dialog box. Here you can label your field. Let's just call it Custom Field 1. And you can pick the type. We have text, a multi-line of text, so basically a bigger text box for you to fill out, a list of options from a drop-down, or a simple text box. Checkbox, sorry, let's change this, let's do checkbox. We'll do checkbox 1. I hit save, and now you can see this custom field has been entered. If we were to do another one, we can call this drop-down 1, change it to drop-down. Now I have to fill out my drop-down options. Option 1, option 2, option 3, save. Now these two custom fields will show up in my finding template. You can add as many of these as you like. Now I still have the general template active here. So when I go to save the template, I get a warning that says, I can't update the built-in general template. So it's going to create a copy for me. I hit yes. You can see that a general copy has been created. I can rename this if I want. I'll call it my finding template. I'll save it. You can see it's been updated over here. So at any time, you can come back and update your custom templates as you fine-tune them over time. You can duplicate them to make different versions by simply selecting it and hitting duplicate. And of course, you can delete them when they're no longer needed. So at any point, I can change the template that my inspection is using. Under Edit, Inspection Details, here I'll see all the information that I initially entered when I created my inspection. You can see my inspection type is General, and here's my inspection findings template. The new one I created is now here. I can select it and hit Save. If I then go to edit the template by selecting any image that's included in a finding and hit Edit Finding, we'll see that now we have some new options here. Our additional fields have been added. Here's our checkbox, and here's our drop-down. And these will show up now in this finding in our report. So building your own custom templates is a powerful feature, that lets you communicate exactly what you want to your clients while removing superfluous sections or fields that you simply never use. This helps make your report concise and easy to understand, and it simply saves you time. And we all could be a little more efficient. Okay, so before moving on to creating the report itself, let's take another quick moment to review how delta T priorities work in HeatScribe. So most thermal inspections use a temperature differential, or delta T, to identify thermal anomalies or patterns of interest. The severity of potential issues can be related to the size of the measured temperature differential. HeatScribe has two ways to help you communicate the severity to your clients through delta T priorities. The first way to set our priority is manually. Going back to our transformer finding, we had set the priority to high. You can see that up here in our delta T analysis section. This is done under our finding details here. So I could always change this to low, save it, and you can see it's been updated. So if we go back into our finding templates here, and we edit the finding template that we're currently using, which is this custom one we made in the last section of this tutorial, pro users have the option of enabling an automated priority rating, which is done so from here by selecting Set Priority from delta T. So let's take a look at how this works. So once this setting is active, you can now set a temperature range that corresponds to each of the priority levels. You can add more, you can remove them. It's completely customizable. So this would be useful if there was a particular standard that you or your client adhered to, and it would save you from selecting the priorities manually. So if I save my template now, close, and go back to my image, so by default it's already changed from low to high here. But if I click around, let's see, I change my hotspot from the actual hotspot to somewhere else, like right here. You can see these are close enough that this is just an observation. If I start going back to the hot areas again, now we're at a medium priority, and if I find my hottest point, it goes back to high. So again, this is a powerful feature for pro users when they're working with clients that adhere to a particular temperature differential standard. Next, we'll move on to the last section, which is building and exporting your report. So just like finding templates, every inspection type has a corresponding report template. So the roofing inspection type has a roofing report template. The electrical inspection type has an electrical report template, and so on. These templates are fully customizable for pro users using a feature called the Report Builder. So let's go ahead and make a report with one of the built-in templates. So now that I've finished reviewing my images and I have my finding completed, I can preview my report using the Preview Report button. This generates a temporary PDF for you to review, so let's take a look. The title page contains the basic inspection information, along with the name of your inspection as the title. If you included them, you'll also see your company and your client's logos at the top of the page. Next, we have our inspection summary, which contains information about the inspection, the inspector, and the equipment used, as well as the images that have been included in the report. Below that, we have three sections that cover the scope of the inspection, the limitations inherent in thermal inspections, and an explanation of how priority ratings on our findings work. Note that pro users can completely customize all of these sections, as you'll see in the next part of the tutorial. Pro users can remove these altogether, they can create new ones, and they can edit the text that's included by default. Next, we have an index which lists all of our findings in the report. Each finding has a priority rating and the page of the report that it can be found. In this example, we only have one finding, so you're just seeing one here. And then we have the finding pages themselves. In this case, our finding had two images, so it fits onto one page. You can see our finding title up here, our priority color-coded, our annotations on our visible light images and our measurements, and then all our information down here about what we observed and assessed, our thermal and weather defaults, and our temperature measurements also written out here. If you're happy with what you see, you simply hit export to save a PDF copy of the report to your computer. So next, we'll look at the powerful built-in report builder that pro users can access to completely customize their reports and save them as templates for future use. So while the standard version of HeatScribe limits users to default templates associated with each inspection type, the Pro version unlocks deep customization in templates. Just like custom findings, this feature means you can build your reports to include exactly the sections you want and nothing more. You can then save them as custom templates to use again in the future. This allows you to quickly pull up specific templates tailored to each of your clients. Let's open the report builder and see how we can customize the template. We'll then go deeper and create our own. Opening the report builder, we're greeted with a whole bunch of checkboxes. But first, let's look at the top of the page. Here, we can select the report template we want to work with. You can see that the options below will change depending on what template I'm selecting. For example, if I switch to the roofing template, you can see that the roof datasheet has now been included as a report section. If I make a bunch of changes to this template and I want to save them as a new template, I can do so by clicking the Save New Template button. I can give it a name. New roofing template. I get a confirmation that it's been saved, and of course I can see it under my list now. If I'm working with my new roofing template and I've made some changes and I want to update it, I can simply hit the Update Template, and it gives me a green confirmation text, and now I've updated my new roofing template. Let's continue down this page so I can explain each section in detail. Below that, I have the report title, which of course appears on the cover page of the report. I'll just call this Example Thermal Report. And then the next area is where I choose which sections I want to include in my report. And there are quite a lot of options, as you can see. Some you'll probably always leave on, like cover. Others, cover and findings. But others you may decide to leave off at times. So for example, you may not want a section that explains how your delta T priority rules work for every one of your clients, so you can deselect it there. Note that at any point, you can save the changes you've made to your report and exit back to the main application screen by clicking the Save Report button. Now you can continue to work on your thermal images, you can update your measurements, you can create new findings, whatever you like. And then when you hit the Build Report button again, you can continue working on your report where you left off. Next up, we have the inspection summary section. Here's what this section looks like. Remember, at any time you can preview your report. Let's say there is a line in the summary that is not available by default in HeatScribe. You can add it here. If I wanted to preview my changes, at any point I can hit Preview Report and scroll through it. Here in my inspection summary, I can see the custom summary line and the data that I just entered. Okay, back to the report builder. It's worth playing around with all the customization options available in the report builder. I've tried to leave this part of HeatScribe as open-ended as possible without making it overly complicated and just a sea of buttons. Now, because we're on the roofing template and the roofing datasheet has been selected, that roof datasheet section appears in our report builder. And you can have multiple of them. So if you're inspecting multiple roofs from the same building, you can have multiple roof sections. Fill out all your information here. Again, if there's something that is not included in HeatScribe that you want, you can always add your own custom field and value to the roof section, and even put general comments about the roof if you want. All this will be surfaced in your report. Continuing down, we have our inspection findings section. This is basically to let you know if you had a complicated inspection, what findings are included or excluded from the report, and you'll see them in their appropriate sections here. In our case, we only have one finding, our elevated connector temperature, and it's marked as included in the report. If I wanted to double check it quickly, I could hit Edit Finding and make sure that it was set up the way we wanted it to be set up. Below this, we have the narrative and custom sections. These are the text blocks such as scope, limitations, how priorities work, etc. that will appear before your finding pages in your report. So here you can completely customize the text and titles of these sections. And if you'd like to add your own, you can add a custom section below here. Now remember, back at the top, if there's any one of these that you don't want to include, the ones that are built in, you can just deselect them here. Limitations, inspection scope, and so on. Remember, you can always preview your report, and if you're happy with it, you can hit export to save it as a PDF to your desktop. The last thing to look at are the actual report templates. They function very much like finding templates, and you can edit them by going to Edit and Report Templates. You'll see this screen looks exactly like the finding templates screen. You have your list of templates down the left side and all the customization options on the right. This is the same information that you're seeing in the report builder, but here's where you can create your own and save them for future use. Okay, before we go, I want to show you one more reporting feature that's available in the Pro version of HeatScribe, and that's the image location map. This option will generate a map that shows where your images were taken. I can activate that by clicking the Finding Image Location Map option here. And then in my report builder, the map shows up under the map settings. These are coming from Google, so I can choose a road map style or a satellite style. Now the markers on this map denote where the images were taken. You can also zoom in or out, however you like, or however best fits your inspection. If I preview the report, we can take a look at what this section actually looks like. So you can see it's titled Finding Image Location Map. We have our lovely map here with our 1 and 2 markers. The markers correspond to images, not findings, but you can see the inspection finding that they belong to is denoted here, along with a priority and their exact coordinates. So that's it for the tutorial. Thank you again for your interest in HeatScribe. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out by email to hello@heatscribe.com. Thanks again.